Wise Young Women's Sponsor session, where we'll be talking a little bit about our careers and what we do and our experiences in science and engineering, and also taking any questions from you about any questions you have on next steps. So whether you've just got your A-level results and are wondering about university, or whether you just have some questions for us about what it is we do and why we love engineering and science as a career and why we think you also should consider it. So my name's Lucy and I'm an engineer. I design ships and submarines for the Royal Navy, and particularly my speciality is submarines. I really love it as a career, and every day is different, and it's such an exciting field to be in.
So I'm Sian Cleaver, and I'm another member of the Young Women's Board, along with Lucy, and I'm a spacecraft engineer. So I work for a company called Airbus Defence and Space, and my job is to help to design a spacecraft that go to explore other planets in our solar system, and also spacecraft that help us to carry out tasks on Earth, like weather forecasting, Earth observation sort of things. So yeah, I have a pretty cool job. At the moment, I'm working on some future missions, including one that's going to put a spacecraft in between the Earth and the Sun and help us to monitor space weather. That's something that's becoming quite important now, and the UK are really interested in what we're going to do about this in the future. So yeah, I'm looking into a study to see whether it's feasible to get a new spacecraft up there, where it's best to put it, and what sort of observations it might be able to take, and how we can use these observations to help us understand more about space weather on Earth. So yeah, that's a bit about what I'm doing at the moment. Anything else you'd like me to answer, Lucy?
What A-levels did you study, and why did you choose your degree?
Okay, so I've always known that I wanted to work in the space industry. I was quite lucky in that respect, but I never knew that I would end up being an engineer. That was never really my intention. I didn't really know what engineering was. I just knew that I was interested in space, and for me that meant astronomy and therefore physics. So when I was at secondary school, I leaned towards the science subjects, and then for A-levels I did physics, chemistry, maths, geography and general studies. So I dropped geography after AS level and just carried on with the four. So mainly physics, maths and chemistry. And then I was just really keen to do more astronomy, really. That's all I wanted to do at that time. So that's why I ended up going to university and doing physics with astronomy at Durham University. So yeah, again, even throughout the whole of university, I thought I'll just end up being a scientist, you know, I could get into the space industry that way. I just sort of fell into engineering as a kind of mistake, really. Well, a great mistake as it turned out to be. But yeah, I just heard about the company and I knew that they work in the space industry. And I've always been told that if you're a physicist, you can become an engineer quite easily. So I just applied, and now I have spent the last 3 years learning about engineering and realizing that actually engineering, in my sense of engineering, is pretty similar to the kind of stuff I was doing at university as a physicist.
What would you say to those people that are maybe similar to you in that they have an area of science that they're really passionate about, but they haven't considered engineering? They're just thinking, okay, I'll go and study that subject at university.
Well, I think it's great to be doing something that you enjoy at university. So as long as it's something that you're interested in and that you can put up with studying for, 3 or 4 years, then that's the best thing to do. And you'll find that once you're at university, you'll start to learn about the different opportunities that are out there. So whether that's going into further study in academia, or whether that's, there might be a particular area that you're interested in, and then you start finding out about jobs there that are available. So I don't know, don't rush into it. These things sort of come along and you'll sort of learn about, options, and then you'll probably come across, an opportunity. And then when you really think about it, yeah, it's engineering, because at the end of the day, a lot of, applied science is pretty much engineering. So yeah, just do something you enjoy is what I'd say. And usually you end up doing a career that you enjoy as well.
Yeah, that's definitely important. Okay. What advice would you give your teenage self on results day?
Okay, so I was quite pleased with my results on results day. I was lucky enough to do quite well But I think something I would like to say to myself is don't be sort of blinded by just doing sciencey things if that's what you think you want to do. Because at that age, I was like, right, I'm going to be a physicist. That's it. I just need to do the sciences and physics, and that'll be fine. Actually, now that I work in the space industry, I'm starting to realize how important my other subjects are to me. So, in particular, languages. This is something that didn't even cross my mind as something I needed to worry about that much at school. But now I'm starting to see how, because I work in the European space industry, everybody in the industry, has 2, 3 languages up their sleeve, So having another language is really, really important. And I imagine that's the same for a lot of other engineering industries. Everything's so spread across Europe, if not the world. So if you've got another language under your belt, then that will really make you stand out. So that's probably something I would have told myself. Do a language as an A level, or don't forget all the other subjects that you might have studied, because they're just as important.
So not only would you be working in a team with people that might speak different languages or come from different backgrounds, but actually engineering is just such a international discipline. It's about the world, not really about the country you live in. So there's also opportunities for travel and working abroad if that's something that interests you as well, which is something that I really like about engineering.
Oh yeah, that's me too. And I should add that I did one of the graduate schemes with my company that you mentioned earlier. And as part of that graduate scheme, we were allowed to go abroad for a placement, which I did. So I went out to Germany. So I had a GCSE German under my belt, but that was pretty much it. And I went out there for 6 months, and I had the best time, really. It was really, really good fun, and amazing to meet other people in the company, but the German part of the company. So it was quite eye-opening, and I really learned a lot from that experience. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for travel as an engineer.
Where like how many? Because I know is it 1 in 4 people that study physics at A level are girls, so that's quite a small proportion. So on your physics degree, how many girls were on there? Like, did you feel outnumbered or feel singled out in any way?
For physics, I don't think the gender difference is too much. I mean, yeah, there were more boys than girls, but I'd say maybe a quarter of the lecture theatre was female, and I certainly had a lot of female friends from my course, so I never really noticed that being that much of an issue. In fact, I went to a girls' school as well, so again, having girls in my physics class was completely normal to me. It was only really when I went into my job that people started to ask me what it was like being in the minority as a female. And then when I really started to look around, I think, oh yeah, I am kind of the only one in this meeting, or whatever. But yeah, I wouldn't really say it was that much of an issue. Certainly not at my university at Durham, where I did physics. It was really there was quite a high number of girls, I think.
I think that's a similar thing that I've heard time and time again, because I think I would answer that almost exactly the same, in that, yes, when I actually realised and looked round, I thought, oh yeah, there aren't that many girls here, but you really don't notice it. But it's something that maybe people now studying A levels or GCSEs, maybe they're worried about it. But really, it's not something to worry about from our
No.
experience.
It's also worth saying that when you're at university, well, certainly in my experience, I probably spent half my time hanging out with people from my course, but then the other half hanging out with just other friends who did other degrees. So I wouldn't say that I had any fewer female friends. In fact, probably quite the opposite.
Well, I said what type of jobs, so I've kind of answered that a little bit, but if there's something you want to add, or also maybe if you could just talk a little bit about what you actually do on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, do you wear a hard hat all the time?
Definitely not. No, ultimately, my job is an office job. So I'm what's called a mission systems engineer. So a little bit more on the analyst sort of side of things, rather than the person who actually builds the spacecraft. So actually, I very rarely go into our factory and see the spacecraft being built, much to my disappointment. What I actually do, though, is I sit at a desk in an open plan office, and I will read through documents given to us by the European Space Agency and write responses to these documents. and do some modeling work, some analysis work, and then capture the results of these in reports and things like that. That's the kind of thing I do day to day. Go to a lot of meetings about different projects, design reviews, things like that. That's the kind of stuff that I do day to day, but it's definitely not hard hat wearing or, you know, dirty environment or anything like that. It's just looks like a normal office.
So, in terms of talking about those different things that you do day to day, what kind of skills do you think that you're using most of all when you're doing those design reviews and capturing analysis and things like that?
I'd say problem solving skills, really, and also all the other little skills that you learn at university. So I don't often have to use bits of information that I learned at university, so like stuff that my lecture notes might have told me, but it's the more general skills. So it's, you know, knowing how to write a scientific report, it's knowing how to carry out some scientific analysis in a robust sort of way, and yeah, knowing how to solve problems. But I think that that's not something that you really sit down and learn. I think that's just something that you end up having when you've done a sciencey or engineering type degree, which is quite nice. It's just sort of, you end up just having those skills, which is quite good. And I'd say, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I need to do my job. And most of it, I mean, I was a physicist as well, so I'm not an engineer, and a lot of my colleagues are engineers, like, or are engineers by education. But that's not really been a problem at all, because you just end up learning as you go along. When you're early stage career, there's a lot of people there to help you out, and then you end up finding, oh yeah, that's just the same in physics, but you know, they've adapted it now here for the engineering sense. So yeah, even that wasn't a problem for me.
So, did you get to do on your graduate training scheme, considering you were from physics, so a more pure science background compared to the applied science of engineering, did you get much support on there based on that? So, for example, maybe courses or anything like that?
Okay. As part of my particular graduate scheme, there wasn't a set program of technical training, but instead every 6 months or so you'd have a review with your manager, and more frequently if you asked for it. And at those points you could ask for specific training. So I did have some specific training, but most of the time it was just me being proactive and asking the people around me, look, I don't have a clue what I'm doing here, can you help me out? You know, and most people are happy to sit with you and explain things to you. So that's kind of how I learned how to do a lot of my job, and I'm still learning every day. I mean, only today I was asking people for advice about something or asking them to explain things to me. So that's completely normal as far as I understand, or at least I hope it is. But you must have been the same, right? You know, going into a new sort of engineering environment and of something completely alien to you, and you
Exactly.
kind of just have to ask people for help, and you work it out as you go along.
Exactly, yeah. Even if you've done an engineering degree in, say, civil and structural engineering, and then you go into a company, that's a completely different environment from being in the university when you're learning, or you're expected to learn, to a place where you're working and you're expected to know things. So it's very different. But as you say, everyone's really willing to help you, really, that because engineering is such a teamwork activity, everybody wants everyone to do well, and they want everyone on their team to be able to do the best they can. So they're really supportive in doing things like that. And I found that there are lots of opportunities to do training courses, like you said. And engineering is a discipline that's changing every day. So there's always new opportunities to learn and study. So that's something quite positive about it as well. And that also means that there's always new opportunities. So I might be similar to when I started out and I wanted to design bridges, and now I'm actually designing submarines. The fact that you've done engineering, it's such a foundation in just how things work in the world that you can switch to different disciplines if that's something that you want to do.
That's such a good point. I think even in the space industry, I'm learning that there are just hundreds and hundreds of different jobs. Most of them, you know, well, I've only just started learning about, and I'm sure there'll be many more that I become aware of in the future. But so that's just the space industry is that diverse. I imagine that for the whole of engineering is ridiculously diverse. So there's always something that you can turn your hand at and something that you can apply your basic skills to in the future, because yeah, I think engineering and science degrees teach you a special way of thinking that you can then apply to everything. It's not just the facts that you're learning.
Yeah, which I think is probably what's shown on like Big Bang Theory and things, is that it's kind of true in that engineers and scientists have a unique way of looking at the world and talking to each other. So that's why you get these stereotype things like on Big Bang Theory, like groups of scientists. But it's because they're so passionate about what they do. It's not that they go to their job and then when they come back, they're not doing their job anymore. It's that it's a way of looking at the world and understanding it. So they're always excited to learn more and talk about it. So I suppose that's why that works.
You're right. You're right. I've seen that a lot with my colleagues. Some of them are a lot more interested in the sort of how you make things, a lot more interested in technology sort of things. And they're always wondering how things are working or how you can make it better. For me, I'd say I'm less interested in the actual sort of hardware side of things, but then I am still really interested in the other side of things. So, more like the studies and the analysis of missions and things like that. And so, yeah, I guess it's just that sort of inquiring mind, wanting to know more and wanting to learn more about things.
Exactly, that's very true. That's just basically the description of an engineer or scientist, I think. You mentioned that you knew from a fairly early age that you wanted to do physics. Is that because someone maybe in your family was into science?
No, quite the opposite. My mum is a primary school teacher and my dad is a policeman. So engineering or science in academia, those sorts of things were kind of unheard of in my family. But I think I was 6 years old when I announced that I wanted to be an astronaut. We think I was inspired at Kennedy Space Center. And I was lucky enough to have parents who said, yeah, go for it. If that's what you want to do, then why not? And they always gave me opportunities to express my interests. They got me a little toy telescope, things like that when I was very young, and encouraged me and things like that. So yeah, I guess I was lucky to have people who believed in me and, didn't laugh at my ambitions, because I think, yeah, sometimes that happens, doesn't it? You come up with a crazy ambition and people just knock you down. But I think it's nice to have really crazy ambitions because, okay, yeah, I probably won't end up being an astronaut, but I think I'm going to have a pretty interesting career because I had that initial dream in the first place.
You never know though, because Sandra Bullock got to go on that mission in Gravity because she designed the equipment and no one else could go and test it.
There you go. Maybe. You never know. But hey, if it doesn't, then I am so glad I had that inspiration or that ambition in the first place, because otherwise I probably never would have gone down this route.
Yeah, it's true. I had something, I guess it's not really a negative, but was that because I think I was 11 and I said I wanted to design bridges. And so that's structural engineering. And we did what's it called, when you fill in the form and you say like what career would suit you, and it said structural engineering, and obviously announcing it to teachers, some sort of thought, really, but then I remember later on when I went back to visit the school, and they were saying, when I was doing my degree, and they said, oh, what are you studying? And I said structural engineering, and then they were like, oh, you are doing it. And so it was sort of a bit negative, because I was like, yeah, well, I did tell you I wanted to do it.
I would say that was positive. That's like in your face. I'm doing exactly what I've always wanted to do, and nobody put me off. So that's really nice.
Because that's true.
But did you have were your parents engineers?
No, so exactly the same as you. I was the first in my dad's, well, no, actually my cousins, but the first of my immediate family. So neither of my parents went to university. So I was the first to go to university, and I was the first of my mum's side of the family to go to university as well. So my mum is a support worker for deaf children that are integrating into mainstream schools. My dad's a journalist, so and terrible at DIY, so don't have the engineering and science from them. But yeah, again, just very supportive in what I wanted to do, and even though they didn't know much about it, they were very encouraging of me finding out more about it, I suppose. But I guess it may have been a little bit of a shock when I said that I was actually going to design submarines as opposed to bridges.
But it sounds like we've been both quite lucky. I mean, I guess there must be people out there who have less supportive parents or don't have that sort of network behind them. So something that just occurred to me then, I guess it doesn't have to come from your parents. There's someone that you can find who shares your dream and, you know, and believes in you, sort of thing, whether that's a teacher, whether that's, you know, a neighbor, or, you know, anybody really, or just a friend. So I think it's worth saying that, find that person who believes in you and listen to them in their encouragement. You know, don't be put off if there are people who are, you know, trying to persuade you down another route.
Exactly, and there's so many organisations out there like Wise doing things like this that you can get a link in. There's lots offering like mentor opportunities or free events where you can come and find out a bit more, and you might find that person at one of those events that would be willing to any engineer almost. I've never met one yet that doesn't want to speak to younger people about what it is that they do and why they love it. So almost any would be really not just happy to do it, but really excited to have the opportunity of helping whoever it is learn more about what it is like to be an engineer, and be really encouraging. So definitely,
there's always someone to take you under their wing, isn't there?
Yeah, that's really good. So I'll just see if we covered all the questions or not. It said one of the questions that I guess I already answered, but it was what A levels do you need to study engineering and science? So I know for me, for me it was physics and maths, and then a recommended other science. And I guess for you it was physics. But beyond like just the physics, what were the other suggestions?
It might be a good point to bring up the further maths sort of situation, because I kind of didn't really love maths. It was all right, but I didn't love it at GCSE, and so I chose not to do further maths at A level, despite a lot of people telling me that I should do. So I think it's probably worth saying that you don't have to have further maths if you want to go and do an engineering or science subject. I mean, yes, if you do, then it's great, but no, in my case, you really didn't need it, because a lot of the further maths students found that they were just repeating all the maths in the first year of university anyway. So if that's something you haven't got, then don't worry. But obviously, if it's something you have got, then yeah, you can probably sleep through your maths lectures maybe for a bit if you have maths lectures. So that's kind of where I didn't listen to people's advice. But then again, I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't do further maths, and so I therefore had a few free periods in a week when I was doing my A levels, and in those free periods I took up Russian, which is also something that's quite useful to have in the space industry. So yeah, it's kind of swings and roundabouts. I'm glad that I didn't do further maths, although then again it did mean that I had to work maybe a little bit harder in first year than some other people. I don't know, what about you? Did you do further maths?
I didn't do further maths. I did physics, maths, and chemistry. Well, those were the days, I guess, where we did 3 and we didn't, whereas people now are doing 5, which is amazing. It is. And the suggestion was physics, maths, and another science. No, it didn't really. Further maths didn't really come up as that I needed, so that I didn't have to ever consider that. Well, I suppose I did consider it, but again, I didn't go along with just sticking to the sciences, because I did history at AS level, so I wanted to keep something kind of arty in there, I suppose, and another interest.
So that's what I did. I did geography as well, because that was just something I was really interested in, really. And actually, I did some modules of geography at universities, so it proved quite useful in the end.
Talking about what options other than a degree, I mean, I mentioned apprenticeships, but I'm not sure if there's any other that you can think of.
Well, apprenticeships springs to mind to me as well. I mean, where I work at Airbus Defence and Space, we have a graduate scheme, but we also have an apprenticeship scheme, and you can join that after your GCSEs actually, or you can join it after A levels. And that's a great way of getting a qualification, but also getting stuck in from day one. In fact, they get to do all the fun and building of satellites and stuff, which I'd love to do. So yeah, it does look pretty good, and also you can earn a bit whilst you're learning, which is, you know, something that you can't really do so easily when you're at university. Apart from that, I've got some colleagues who have changed careers. So I've one friend who she started off as a teacher, a maths teacher, I think it was, in a secondary school, and then decided that no, she wanted to go back to doing engineering. So she did another degree, a master's degree for 1 year, and then came into the company that way. She then, you know, had a complete career change. So again, that's something that can happen if you've got a good foundation, a good solid foundation in a technical subject. Then you can always switch and change, you know, even probably 20 years down the line if that's what you want to do. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how else you could get into the industry. I mean, I guess there's always work experience and internships and things like that. But usually those go hand in hand with either studying at university or at college or something.
I wonder if you could go in through like a technician route or something. Like if you started, say, building some of the parts for the engineering industry, and then maybe you'd start an apprenticeship from that, maybe, or go back.
Of course, yeah.
That route.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot about that, but I think at our company, yeah, you'd come in as an apprentice if you were early career and you wanted to be a technician. But yeah, there's always that route, isn't there? To get usually you'll get your hands on the kit that way. You know, you actually get to build stuff and make stuff, which is quite cool.
Yeah. So going back to your the time on your graduate training scheme, you said you spent time in Germany. What other things did you get to do?
Oh, it was really good. So our graduate scheme was 2 years in duration, and typically you'll do 4 6-month placements on those. I think that's probably quite similar to a lot of other engineering firms. Maybe it's, you know, over 3 years or something like that, but they all have pretty similar formats. And I was quite lucky because my manager at the time said that I could go off and do whatever I liked. So I started off doing a placement in on the more sort of communications side of things. So looking at how you can make communications to satellites secure. Then after that, I thought, hang on, I want to use a bit more physics. So I went off and did a placement in the electric propulsion department, which was really cool because actually I actually got to use, you know, dig out my lecture notes and actually use some of the physics that I learned in that, which was the first time I'd done that since university. Then after 6 months there, then I went to Germany and had this amazing time living in Bremen in the north of Germany. When I was there, I was working on a guidance, navigation and control project. So looking at how you can control launches, so it's rockets when they're in the upper stages of their flight path. So that was quite interesting, and I got to see some launches being built and things like that. It was really cool. And then my final placement, I was back in the UK, and I was working on the solar orbiter mission. That was one of the highlights of my career so far. I really enjoyed working on that. And so I was a systems engineer for that. So yeah, systems engineer is one of those awful titles that doesn't really mean anything, but most people tend to be a systems engineer. Basically, what I worked out that a systems engineer does is a bit of everything. You've got to speak to everyone all across the team, all the specific engineers, you know, so like the thermal engineer or the you know, the mechanical engineer, things like that. And you've got to check that all of their designs and their ideas will work with everybody else's. That's kind of the job for a systems engineer.
That's essentially what a naval architect does, or what I do.
Okay, so I'm understanding your job better now.
Yeah. So looking at because you can imagine all the different systems on a submarine, like the mechanical engineering system or the propulsion system, and you've got to make sure that they all integrate into something that's balanced in terms of weight and space and all the other requirements that you need to achieve. But your
we have to do exactly the same thing.
But your graduate scheme, Sally, I want to go back and do your graduate scheme as well. If you can just keep doing graduate schemes, it would be amazing.
Yeah, although, yeah, there was, I guess the negative of a graduate scheme can be that you end up chopping and changing quite a lot. Well, certainly I did anyway. I had free reign. So I ended up doing 4 completely different things in my graduate scheme, which was great in that I got a great experience of the company. I got to learn a lot about, different departments, and I learned across the board. I learned, bits about different areas. But it does also mean that I don't have the depth of knowledge as some of my other colleagues who started at the same time as me, because they've just focused on one thing and now they're pretty good at that one thing. I've sort of taken a little bit longer to find where it is I want to be and to get good at that job. So I guess that's something to bear in mind about graduate schemes. But then again, all in all, I'd say it's a great experience, and knowing more is, more about a wide range of things is probably better, than just concentrating on one thing. At least it opens up your options for the future.
Particularly if you want to do if you're going to be doing system engineering or project or that type of engineering degree, because actually having an understanding of all the different areas is really important, because it gives you a better understanding.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
But also, it's important, I guess, when you're looking to apply for that graduate scheme, to see what type of freedom you have, because it sounds like you had a really good one and similar to me, and that you got to choose. And I think that's something that's quite important, because it's not just all about where your company wants you to work, but it's also about you and your own development, and also taking control and responsibility of that is something that's quite a good experience as well. So when I was doing my graduate scheme, it's very similar to yours, but we could choose to do between 3 and 6 months. So you could do 4, but you could end up maybe doing 6, or depending what you did. So I did one in my first one. Oh, the first one was when I went to America. So that was in a kind of specialist area of the design, looking at one aspect of design. And that was really interesting because of the collaborative team. So it wasn't necessarily, the interesting part wasn't necessarily the product. The interesting part was working with people from other companies and from other countries as well, and seeing the differences in how they work and how you produce something that works for everybody. And then I came back, so working in America, obviously that was the exciting part as well, being somewhere different. Then I came back to the UK and I worked in an area that has a complicated title called vulnerability reduction. It's basically all about, it's the one area that makes a warship different from any other ship out on the sea, which is that we need to take it into threat situations. And if we take it into a threat situation, we need to be able to get it home safely afterwards. So that's what vulnerability reduction about is. Essentially, if you were talking about a car, it would be the team that's designing the seatbelts and the airbags, but for a ship. And that was in Bristol. And then I went to Portsmouth to work in the dockyard that they have there. So that was when you're in the dockyard, that is safety shoes and hard hat territory. But it's really amazing being able to see. I know you said kind of disappointed that you don't get to see the spacecraft being built. So this kind of gave me that time to see the ships being built and being repaired and refitted, and actually work with the Navy to see what they think of the ships and submarines. So that was quite important. And then I went to UCL to do an MSc, like postgraduate course. But probably the most exciting part of my graduate scheme was getting to go to sea on a submarine for 6 days and 7 nights, and really see how it's used in practice. Because you can see something, it's like seeing maybe an empty building or an empty flat, or like if you were going to buy a house or something, or you designed it, you can't really get a feeling of what it's like if the space is empty. You have to see the people in there and how they're going to use the space. Right. That was the best experience. So we also have Keely from the Young Women's Board, who I'm just going to see if I can add her to the conversation to see if she can add any further information about what it is she does for her job, and any further advice she has. I'll just see if I can add her. Not yet. But Keely, if you could just send your email address as a question, then I can do that. So I think we might have lost Sean.
Yeah, no, sorry, it cut for a bit, but I'm back now. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's all right. I don't know if you, I was just explaining what I did on my graduate scheme. So,
yes, I caught most of it. I didn't catch the end.
Oh, the end was just, Will was the best bit. It was that going to sea on a submarine was the best part. So it's similar to yours in that it's those unusual experiences where you think not many people have experienced this or done this. That's kind of, I think, what makes the best bit, I think, for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, a moment that sticks out for me in my memory was going to Germany on my placement, and then seeing the ATV being built. Now, ATV is the automated transfer vehicle. It's a cargo ship that they use to go to the space station. I saw that being built, and then a few months later, I looked up into the night sky and I saw the International Space Station go over. I knew it was going to go over. But then behind it was another satellite I could see, like, following it. And I Googled it, and that was the ATV. It was the cargo ship that I'd seen being built, the exact same one, in the clean room. And that was flying behind the space station in space. And that was a really cool moment. That, as much as I didn't have any part in designing or building that, I'd seen it being made, and then I could see it again orbiting the Earth, which was pretty special. So yeah, it's those little moments, I think, in engineering that make you realize, yeah, I have a really, really cool job. It's not many people who get to do this.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting. It's like anything, when anyone's designed it or built it or even seen it being designed and built, and then you see it in use, is just you can't beat it, really, because it's like the ultimate feeling of problem solving when the problem is actually there.
Exactly, when you've made a difference to something. Is that Keely I see who's joined?
Yes, she should be joining soon. Let's see.
Okay, maybe we'll give it.
It might be a slight delay in the conversation, so wait till she gets.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be good to see if she has any further advice, or actually just to hear a bit more. But I guess she's the maths person, the person that did do further maths, I think. So see about that. So yeah, I don't know if you saw about the results that we had out today, and the percentages and things like that. So it's all looking good for the girls beating the boys in the subject.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, of course, we're still beating the boys. I don't know why that is, but hey, it's definitely a good sign for engineering and sciencey subjects, because, you know, we've all got the brains, we've all got the intelligence to do it. Let's get out there and sign up to the courses and you know, start thinking about careers to make the most of this. Exactly.
It's really important. But also something that I found quite interesting was in the single A levels, so the ones that you do in a specialist subject. So for example, there's one in engineering and there's one in science and computing and things like that. And actually in the engineering, the girls were doing almost 50% better. And although they're in a small minority, that minority was actually similar to what you see in today's engineering. So in the engineering workforce, I already mentioned that it was 8%, and I think it was about 10% girls within this A level, but they were achieving 50% better marks than the boys. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's showing that it's not just the subjects, but we can apply it as well.
Exactly, and let's hope they all go on to working in the STEM sort of careers. You know, let's hope we don't lose them, because they'll be good girls to have.
Yeah, definitely. So for Keely, I think is trying to broadcast in, there should be a button underneath where she can click to join us or to start broadcast. And yes, hopefully she'll call in so that we can ask her, interrogate her, all the um, yeah. So have you been doing any like different outreach projects recently, like things that events that people watching might be interested in hearing about?
Yeah, I do a lot of outreach events. A lot of them are going into local schools in the area where I work and doing activities. We have like a build a satellite activity to give students an idea of what it takes to build a satellite and all the different components that go into it. But actually, recently I did. We had space school visitors at my work, so I was helping to do some activities with the space school students. So that's probably something worth mentioning. The space school runs for I'm not sure of the exact ages, but definitely secondary school ages up to the age of 18. And you can go, it's a residential course for people to at Leicester, and they have a lot of activities and a lot of trips out and stuff, and it's really good fun. I did it myself when I was 14, so I was in year 9 and I went along to space school when it was a lot smaller thing than it is now. And it's really sort of taken off, and there was a good 50 or so students with us last week, and that was really good fun. Actually, I love doing outreach things like that because especially to the kids, because they're all obviously quite interested in space anyway, so it's, yeah, you have some really interesting conversations with them. But yeah, I mean, if you are slightly younger and you're watching this, you know, if you're under 18, then it's something to think about. Apply to space school, Google it, space school UK, and I'm sure it will take you to the website. And yeah, it's something, a good fun thing to get involved in, and probably looks good on the CV as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, actually, any of those events where you're going along and showing that you're interested in those do look really good in your university applications and your CV, as you said. But there are so many really cool
Yeah,
things going on that you can get involved with.
and keep them up when you're at university as well. I mean, if you've had your A level results today and you are going off to university.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely
Oh,
worth.
sorry, I lost you there.
Yes, I just carried on your sentence after I finished. Yeah, just saying that, as I agreed with you in that it's good to continue it at university as well, because that will ultimately look good when you're then applying for jobs afterwards, that you've got involved with things like this. And also, for example, if you look at the WISE website and you look at events, there's lots of different events on there that are free to participate in. It's free also to join WISE as a member, and you can hear about different events in your area, because there'll be things happening all over the country that you can find out a bit more about what engineering or science is as a career, or particular questions you have about routes into university.
And things to think about if you are going to university, so internships and you know, sort of work experience, things that you can be doing in your holidays. I don't know if you did anything like that, Lucy.
Yeah, I did in between my third and fourth year,
I mean,
because I did a master's. I did a work experience for 6 weeks with a company called AMEC, who are now called AMEC Foster and Wheeler, I think. And that was in the oil and gas industry. So again, something completely different to submarines and bridges, the bridges that I thought I wanted to do and the submarines I do now. But just to find out, it doesn't necessarily have to be in your dream job. It could be in any field of engineering, because you'll learn a lot about the problem solving and just the way engineers approach problems, and all of that looks good on the CV. Even if by the end of it you say, "Oh, I don't want to be that type of engineer," at least it's actually given you some information that you can use to make choices in the future about where you want to work.
exactly. I'd second that. I mean, I found at the end of first year, I'd started to applying to internships and things, and a lot of my fellow students were like, "Oh, what are we supposed to be doing that?" No, you're not supposed to be doing that, but obviously it looks great if you do. And so I sort of managed to get an extra placement in, you know, before everybody else has sort of twigged that that's probably a good thing to do. So yeah, I mean, when I say placements, I mean like summer placements or internships and things that you can do in your summer holidays. I mean, you get a good 3 months off or something in the summer when you're a student at uni. So yeah, I mean, definitely go out and have fun and travel and things like that if that's what you want to do. But don't forget, you know, a week or two of work experience here and there, or, you know, a couple of months as an internship is really valuable experience. Like you say, yeah, it rules out things that maybe you don't want to do in the future, but also I've ended up working in an area that actually I'm working with my old supervisor from one of my internships. So these things can be pretty useful, and I'm using one of the reports I wrote as well on my internship right now. So yeah, it's quite a good moment actually. I mean, it's all to do with this space weather project I mentioned earlier. So when I was at uni, I did a placement at the European Space Agency, and I was working with the space weather team there. And prior to that, I'd done a summer placement at the Met Office. And now this space weather project, it kind of involves us talking to, you know, people at the European Space Agency and people at the Met Office. So, you know, it's pretty cool actually that I've sort of worked in both of those places. So.
Exactly, and you also have an understanding not necessarily about the like the physics behind it, but also about how those companies work and the things that the way they approach things and what they want to get out of it. So you also have a better level for communicating with them and working together.
Exactly, yeah, and also it gives you a few contacts. So, you know, people that you can drop an email a couple of years later and be like, oh, you know, hi, do you remember me? I'm working on this. You know, it's great to have to start building up a little network even when you're at university. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep at the back of your mind.
Yeah, definitely. But also, even if you don't get to do, I know it is difficult, people say, finding work experience and work placements. So even if you don't manage to find one, there's other ways you can get experience, or it's best to think outside the box a little bit. So, for example, for structural engineering or civil engineering, when I was on holiday once in America, I got involved with the Habitat for Humanity project, which, if anyone doesn't know what it is they essentially build a house, out of a wooden frame, for people that don't have homes. So particularly, I think that it took off a little bit after Hurricane Katrina when people had lost their homes, and you can get involved building that. And obviously that really is good experience for civil engineering and building, and also there might be some opportunities just to I don't know, even getting involved in your local community, and actually there's a project, say, that they want to do over summer. If you can get involved with that, that's all has applicability to engineering in terms of working in a team, having a schedule of how that's going to work, and maybe being in charge of part of it. You're then getting leadership skills as well. So by thinking outside the box, you can also get some good experience on the CV.
Definitely, even clubs and things. I mean, I used to be a member of an astronomy club, things like that. If that's what you're interested in, then that's actually something that my employers have told me that they look for actually when they get new graduates in the company. Obviously, the graduates don't have any professional experience, or you know, very little. So they'll look at ways that you can show that you're actually passionate about engineering or science. So in my case, they look for people who have an interest in space, and so some of the clubs and things that you're a member of can really show that, or even just things that you do in your free time. You know, if you like to build model rockets, things like that, you know, that would be really useful if you're interested in the space industry. And I imagine it's the same in your industry too. You know, if you've just got an interest in maritime sort of things, then it all looks really good on your CV.
Exactly, because as we've said, everyone that in engineering science, they usually have a passion for that subject. So the more that you can show it, the more it's gonna look good, and the more they're gonna see. Because if you have that natural interest in it, like it was like when we were talking about when your engineers then are not at work, they're still talking in their engineering, they're still talking about things, they'll still be wondering, well, how does that work? How does that work? And if you have a natural interest in something and you do a part of a club that does that, then that just shows that interest, and it shows that it's something that isn't just a day job, it's a way of life.
Yeah, exactly. It's more than that. Yeah, that's a good point.